Hello, you amazing people out there, and welcome to the Amazing Action Comics podcast, where we are all about independent comics. I am one of your hosts, Angel, with John Pepe.
How's it going, Angel?
It is another Monday, another week, but it is all good. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm doing good. It's you know what? It's warm today. It's
Oh,
been
dude,
warm there. We're
yeah,
getting there. We get that extra hour of sunlight at the end of the day.
I know, but we lost the hour to get it.
That's tough. I know.
I was
That is these
so
sacrifices
pissed.
were made.
Yes, are we? Let me get this correct. Are we the only time zone that still does
No,
daylight
no,
savings?
I think everyone still does it. Yeah.
No,
Really?
sure. I
No,
don't
it
think
has to
so.
like Pacific time has to be the same, right?
It does, but I don't
Yeah.
think they changed their clock. I think we're the
Interesting.
only ones that do it,
Interesting. I don't
and
know.
we're not. You know what? I'm going to look it up. I'm almost positive not every time zone changes their
Mm,
clock,
mm.
and we're not. Yeah.
Or
Well,
you could look it up, or somebody out there, if you're watching or listening,
yes.
make an independent comic book about that, and then get it out in time for us to review it.
No, that would be fucking. I'd actually read it because it's not anthropomorphic. As long as you don't make anthropomorphic animals doing it, I'm good to go. All right, guys. Welcome to another episode of. Oh, what are we doing? We're reviewing comics today, right? It's the Indie
Yeah,
Comic Review.
same thing we do every couple of weeks, Angel.
Every couple of weeks, yeah. Well, you know what? It looks like it might be moving in that direction, unfortunately, right? I mean, it's
Mm,
just been so scarce. You know, I was reading another article today about this whole bankruptcy with Diamond, and more for like the small press and the small publishers who are getting the short end of the stick on this whole thing. I mean, you look at Marvel and DC and even Image; they're going to be all right. They've already moved on. They're with other distributors. They're going to be fine. It's just all the people that can't afford to continue because they're not going to get paid
yeah,
their money
yeah,
from this bankruptcy.
yeah.
And it was interesting because I'm not going to mention any names, but in the article, they had gone through this before previously when Diamond had taken over everything and other distributors went under. And basically, they were saying two things. One, if Diamond knew that they were going to be filing for bankruptcy and yet still took books from the publishers and sold those to retail shops and are not going to pay them back, is there some kind of legality there?
Right? Is
And
that like an
two,
antitrust thing or something like
yeah, and
that?
two, if they didn't know they were going to file for bankruptcy, but they did file for bankruptcy and received these books from publishers, why did they just not give them back to the publishers and not to the retail shops and take the money,
Yeah.
kind of thing? But there's also that other end of it as well, where there's been retail shops that haven't been paying their bill for a very long time.
That's something. Yeah, that I was reading about too. I was going to mention that. The Diamond, for all its faults, and this could be considered a fault, but they were actually very um, they were worked with a lot of retailers that had trouble paying on time, and
Hmm.
so they let a lot of balances kind of accrue, and and still worked with shops to make sure they got the books. And I think the number I saw was something like 33 million in outstanding debt
Yep.
from other shops that
Yep.
they allowed to kind of carry this debt, and they're thinking 6 to 10 million is not recoverable. But now, yeah, they are apparently a little more aggressively than they have in the past, reaching out to these stores to say, "Hey, can look, you need to pay us now. We let you go this long, help us out, right?"
Right.
And
Right.
so that's an interesting little thing that happened in the last couple of weeks. Um, that 33 million, if they could get all of that back, would probably save the company.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's going to happen, but just because there's no offset. I mean, most comic shops are still struggling, and now we're going to get even less material. You're going to walk back into comic stores probably within the next, I would say, 6 months or so, and it's going to be primarily the big two. Well, let's say three now, right? I mean, we keep reviewing Image Comics only because it is creator owned, but they're the third largest publisher out there. when it comes to actually publishing books. So yeah, it's crazy, and then it takes away from what we were trying to do here, which is put a spotlight on stuff that most people wouldn't read. Now there's just not going to be material to read, but I think it's gonna force the industry and people that are in the industry to kind of pivot and say, okay, what can I do to stay afloat, and what are the avenues besides the direct market can I utilize to get my material out there?
Which has already begun, and I think this stuff happening with Diamond is also a ripple effect from crowdfunding, Kickstarters, Patreons.
Right.
Creators finding ways to get their stuff out there, either through digital or print to order. I think
Right.
print to order is such a great idea for younger, your people
Yes.
doing this on their own. That way, you're not sitting on more backstock than you need to be.
Correct. Yeah, but I wish there was sort of like there was a relationship where Kickstarter was a semi-distributor,
Right.
so that if there was a back end for retailers to say, okay, hey, this project is launching, do you want to get it into your stores, kind of thing, and allow publishers to, not publishers, direct retailers to be able to buy copies and stuff like that. Because it is, the only benefit for Kickstarter from I guess the consumer end is all the perks that you get. Like if you're going to buy a single issue, it's actually more expensive on Kickstarter. So you're going to pay $10 with shipping and everything like that. Yeah. It's more expensive than just walking into your local comic shop and picking it up. But the positives are is if you don't have a local comic book shop, then you can buy it direct from Kickstarter. But then there's the perks that come along with it. So whether it's going to be posters, signed copies, whatever marketing gimmick that they have going on with the Kickstarter campaign that allows it to give it a little bit more value, so that when you're shipping more items for the same amount rather than just that one item. But I just wish there was sort of like this relationship. But again, too, a lot of these retailers are now, especially the older ones, they're into their 30th, 40th year. How much more pivoting are they going to do in regards to adding more to their store, kind of thing? Especially when they have, now they're ordering from Lunar, they're ordering from PRH. Are they going to start ordering from other little direct from small publishers and stuff like that? I don't think they're going to go through that headache, to be honest. Yeah. It's sad.
Yeah. I'm not a lawyer, right? But it would be interesting, or if there was a way to sort of like carve out a section of Diamond to still continue to exist, and be able to distribute, not just like the toys and statues and merch, but also for those companies that still have yet to find a home or might not have a home, to have a distribution hub through them,
right?
Just like Diamond on a smaller scale,
right?
Or you go back and reverse the process, and it's coal and not diamond anymore, right? But like just something that's going to do like a little bit of a little bit of a small scale or a smaller scale distribution. That way you wouldn't have all the, you'd have some layoffs, but you'd still have people working.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think it needs to be something completely new that's not Diamond. And I think you're right. I think but it's tough, right? Because you still need that company to make money. And I don't know if there's enough demand for small press material in retail shops to have a company be successful to distribute through. I wish there was, because imagine just 100 or 150 or 200 publishers under this distribution, for just small press. Nothing but just small press and independent creators. That would be awesome. It would just give the retail shops another, especially the ones that do support, independent creators. This would be awesome. But we can dream. And speaking about this, we'll know probably within the next couple of weeks whether or not this is completely folding, if they've sold off and stuff like that. Listen out for that news. That's what I've been checking like almost every day, but
I know.
We'll see what happens. All right. In other news, in April, we're really excited. We have the Indie Creator Spotlight. We've been having people reach out to come onto the show to kind of talk about their projects and themselves. We have, I know I'm going to butcher her name. It's Madeline, right?
Yeah, that looks right.
Madeline. I guess we'll figure it out.
We'll find out.
She did the Boston Metaphysical Society that you reviewed
Yep.
a while back. So she's the writer for it. She's going to be on in April. We're really excited to have her. We're going to have her like up at crack of dawn because she's in California. And we're here on the East Coast. So there's a 3-hour difference. So it'll be like midnight for her. Well, it'll feel like midnight for her. So look out for that. And then also, guys, if you're a creator and you want to come on to the show with John and I and, talk about your project that you have coming up, we'd love to have you on. Just visit the site, amazingactioncomics.com, and look out for the /podcast and just fill out the form. We'd love to have you on.
Especially if you're from a different time zone, because we're going to ask Madeline Holly Rosing, being on the West Coast, do you fall back and spring ahead like we do here on the East Coast? So.
I'm gonna research it before the next show and let you know.
Sure. How do you pronounce your first name?
Yes.
And do you say your class? Great. Good luck with the next book. Have a good night.
And we're good. So what we're going to be talking about her upcoming Kickstarter project, which would be cool. So look out for that. On another note, really, really sad. So IC3 is not going to happen for us this year because something came up. The event is still going on. So if you're going there, fantastic. I spoke to Matthew, who's one of the showrunners for the show. We had sent over a ton of material for the gift bags that they have. So like bookmarks, trading cards, some books as well. They're going to still be thrown into the goodie bags. And I think it's like the first 150 or 200 guests of the show will actually get a goodie bag. So if you're still going, fantastic. Just, you'll have a goodie bag in there with some of our stuff in there, along with some other creators. So, and he's already talking to him about dates for next year because I want to make sure I lock it in because we definitely want to visit the show and then be a part of the show. So he's been really awesome. So Matthew, thank you for everything that you've done. And I hope you guys have a really solid show. Sucks that we're not going to be there, but we'll see what happens next year. Cool. All right. That's all the news that we have for you this week. We're going to hop into the reviews from here. We have 2 books over the last couple of weeks. I wish we had more, but there's just stuff that's happening in the woodworks. All right. So I'm going to let John hop in. And what do you want to start with?
So I'll start, I guess, we'll go chronologically. We'll go with the book that came out 2 weeks ago, and then we'll do the book that came out last week. So this is from Dark Horse. It is called Jump Scare. And this is written by the ever-prolific Cullen Bunn.
Yes.
Illustrated by Danny Luckert, lettered by Joshua Reed. And then you got your Daniel Chabin editor, assisting editor Chuck Howard-Leese, and assistant editor Foster R. Cubbins. Pretty much the same editing crew that you have on most of the Dark Horse stuff.
Do you know what there wasn't a credit for?
What?
A colorist. So I'm assuming that he did both the art and the coloring.
Yeah, and I think I've encountered that in the other series that I believe they both did together, the Shock Shop. That was like that horror anthology, horror host kind of thing. That was like I always dig that style. Good way to do an anthology. And I think he's the colorist as well. If I don't see a credit for colorist, just artist, that's pretty much what I think is going on there. And you know what, as far as his art, man, he's great. He's really good, super detailed. You can see it right there on the cover.
Beautiful.
So we're going to get right into it as far as what this is about. So this takes place in Empire City, and it had fairly recently been under attack by some Lovecraftian demons from some netherworld called Leviathan. Very Hellraiser, which is kind of good to know. The horror movie roots in this are very deep, and a byproduct of that, because apparently, as you are told in narrative, and then we'll kind of get into that a little bit later, the invasion was repelled by a team of superheroes, but there were still residual monsters and magic and stuff like that. So this teenage girl, very obsessed with horror movies, and has seen just about every horror movie more than once, can know them backwards and forwards, child of very ultra-religious parents who are very rich. She gets the whamma jamma. She encounters something. She gets these powers, and she decides to, even though she's a big horror nerd, she uses these powers for good, and she calls herself Jump Scare, which if you know what a jump scare is because you're a horror movie fan, boom, right there. And one of the things that so along with this is the the super speed, the super strength, power set. And she also has this really cool power where she can summon items used by killers in the horror movies that she's seen,
Mm-hmm.
and use those as weapons. And she, as a hero, questionable because she doesn't hold back, but she definitely mutilates bad people. And she's sort of like this new hero, this new icon in Empire City. And her mission is to fight monsters, but she's estranged from her parents. But if you know narrative tropes, you know that estrangement won't last too long.
Yes.
And really well written by Colin. Danny Luckhart's art, like I said, is just awesome. It's really superhero dynamic, very detailed, but also has a real good sense of like fun and scare about it because the gore is very visceral, it's very, very there, but it's also really lighthearted that you have to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really loved that Colin Bunn does is the movies. So it's a really cool like visual thing where every time she conjures up a weapon, it's like the chainsaw. It's a movie ticket, and it's like the chainsaw from Yo Mama's Pillow is Bleeding or Blood on Your Mom's Pillow from 1975.
Yes.
It's all these fake horror movies, but Colin Bunn has these movies like all in his head because she's kind of there's one part where she's pulling different weapons from different movies and the tickets are popping up and she's giving these like little one sentence origins for like all the characters and stuff like that, like in a very Spider-Man-y banter with the guy that she's killing. But so I thought that was really neat that like he and the titles were great, and I know that knowing how Colin Bunn is, because everything is so fully realized with him, that he just has all of these movies, these fake horror movies, just all have existed in his head for years, and this is his way of getting those out there.
Yeah, it was great. I think it's one of these things where if you're like a superhero fan and don't really like horror, then this can introduce you to the horror genre because it does have that superhero aspect in that horror field, and then vice versa as well. And if you're a Colin Bunn fan, and this is right up your alley. And if you don't know who he is, I like him because he writes horror really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
It can be fun and funny, and it reminded me really of a freaking 1980s horror movie. The way that it was kind of like just flowing through. It's just a really easy, breezy read. You don't have to overthink anything in this particular book, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It was like when I read the title, I was like, "What the fuck is this going to be about?" And then by the end of the book, you're just like, "This makes so much fucking sense." And in a jump scare in a movie, it's that point of the movie where it literally makes you jump and popcorn just flies out of you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not jumping, it's her that's making the monsters jump.
Yeah.
So she's giving the jump scare to the monster that she's about to unlock, which is so great. And her power set is funny, and she's that teenager at the end of teenager to almost like early 20s. So there's that almost Spider-Man kind of banter, which can get kind of like old really quickly, but it's not overly done, which is great. And she only really uses it when she's destroying monsters, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and again, like that's the thing that I love about Colin is that a lot of his horror works, or a lot of his action superhero stuff works, is because he does that work. He puts the character development in, even with just very little details. Like, but everything, like I said, does feel fully realized, like these fake movies. And him and Danny Luckert work really well together because as an artist, Danny does that as well. Like one of the neat things that was like, you see her, I love the bit where she's like, "Yeah, you know what? We're all sick of origin stories, but I'm going to tell you my origin story anyway." She's very, very cheeky, right? Yeah. And you see how the very pristine and clean environment of the house that she lived in with her parents, and then when you see her own apartment and it's like all dark and it's all monster movie posters and monster toys and stuff like that when when we first got our own place. We did. We were like, we're gonna, and your first place by yourself is always decorated like, like your college dorm or
Right.
like, like your high school room. But now it's like no one's harassing you about it, and you can just do whatever you want. I just love that visual detail that when she got on her own, she's like surrounded
Yes,
with shit she
yes.
loves.
And he did it a lot too, because comics have been around for a while, and they've covered pretty much every single type of trope and niche and cliche out there. And every time she went into a cliche, she would say it.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I know
Yeah.
this is cliche, but it is what it is. I mean, I'm me. Those are my parents. You've seen it 1,000 times, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then her sister being on her parents' side and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really well done, because you start with her as jump scare, then she gives you the background origin story of her parents, and then goes back into how she got her power set, and then what happens at the very end, where, oh shit, because she's been estranged from her family for quite some time, now she's back with the family, and you're going to find out why. So really cool. I'm going to keep with it. I'm almost positive. I didn't read the synopsis, but I don't think this is going to be an ongoing. I think because Colin Bunn's been doing these 5 to 6 issue short, so I think it's going to be that.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a mini. And then what we were talking about before is that this is actually a spin-off to a graphic novel that they both did together called Beyond Mortal. And it does say it's a Beyond Mortal universe story.
Right.
And that being said, like, we both hadn't read Beyond Mortal. I would like to check it out now because of this. You don't need to have read that to read this, because it gives you the information you need, plus it's its own story, and it just really dives right into it. So it's a good sort of, again, it's like an episode 4, type deal, and you can go back and do the prequel.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, Jump Scare from Dark Horse Comics. Definitely check it out. I'm going to keep up with it. So, all right, cool. All right. Book number 2.
Book number 2 that came out last Wednesday is Dynamite's onslaught of nostalgia cartoon properties continues with
you got that
Hercules.
one. I got that one.
I figured you get you figured you would get that one. I like that, baby. Sharp. Yeah. Our last episode we were talking about Mignola because you had just seen the documentary.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what? That Mignola cover is really cool.
It really is cool.
It is a masterclass in minimalism. Everything is but he just does it so well.
But the use of the black makes everything else pop out. So I hate him so much because he's so good at what he does.
And speaking of a masterclass in minimalism, Herculoids is written by Tom Snigoski, illustrated by Craig Rousseau, colored by Omi Remelante Jr., lettered by Jeff Eckelberry, and edited by Joseph Rybant. And a special thanks to Josh Anderson, Victoria Sellover, and Megan Logan. Don't know what you did, but you are being thanked. And New Jersey's own Dynamite Comics has been doing the, with the last one, Silverhawks, which you were really hyped about.
Loved it.
They've been doing Space Ghost, Johnny Quest. They're doing a Space Ghost, Johnny Quest crossover, and other Hanna-Barbera stuff. I saw there was an ad in here for Wacky Races. They're doing a Wacky Races. I saw that. Yeah.
This
the Hanna-Barbera license has always changed hands a few times. DC had it a bunch of years ago, and they did their stuff with it. Herculoids. Now, I remember watching this as a kid. But now it was always, if you remember, it was Saturday mornings where it was always the new stuff, all the the new cartoons, right? Sunday mornings was all the old stuff that my older networks used to watch. So that's how, when I was a kid, that's how I first saw the 1967 Marvel cartoons, where they just took comic panels and just would
stick them
right?
on.
Those would be on before church. I remember we watched that, getting up the itchy suit to go to church, right? And then also on Sundays would be the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons. So that's how I saw Johnny Quest, Space Ghost, and the Herculoids. And I always, for some reason, I don't know if it was this way, but for some reason, I always feel like after that or before that was that the first Fantastic Four cartoon. So it actually had Human Torch in it. That was also of this era from the late 60s. So in my mind, I always sort of put Herculoids and Fantastic Four together. I always refer to Herculoids as prehistoric Fantastic Four, because they're especially, I think it's because of the big rock guy, right? It was very similar. And then you had the even though it's a mother and son, the two blonde guys always reminded me of Sue Storm and her brother
Mhm.
Johnny, and then the main guy always kind of reminded me of Reed, just for some reason. But so I'm sure I've watched a dozen of these cartoons. I can't remember a single
Nope, me
detail of
either.
any episode. I know the guy, the Triceratops, the Poot, and
Yeah,
whatever. If you don't know who the Herculoids are, this is it. This is your primer right there, because not only really told once, twice in the story, three times with the caption at the beginning of exactly what the deal is with these guys.
right.
So they protect the planet. What's it again? It's called a lot of things, right? And it is this sought after planet um, that people speak of mythically. It's like a Garden of Eden and full of these resources that people want to steal from
Hmm.
across the galaxy. The planet Amzot is what is
Oh, that's right,
mainly
Amazon.
known. Yeah, and so you kind of have this guy who has been searching the galaxy for people who have claimed to have been to this planet, and I guess he's encountered several people, and there's this one alien that he tracks down who has the actual location of where
Hmm.
this mythical planet is, and then he is told the cautionary tale of why you shouldn't go to this planet because the paradise is protected by monsters. I think that's the line, or there's monsters in paradise. So he
Yes.
gets all this and he goes, whatever, I'm going to steal that information from you anyway if you're not going to freely give it up. And then he goes, and literally what he was just told plays out for him on this planet, except we get to now get introduced to each of the characters.
Right.
So there's not a lot of meat to this. It's very much an introductory primer for who the Herculoids are, how they operate, what each of the monsters can do, and the family dynamics. And it's really fun. I think it's a great all ages read. I think that, like they've done with their Thundercats and what's going to happen with Silverhawks and the other stuff they've worked on. I think they're gonna open this up. I think it might take a little bit of a darker turn. I think they're going to really play with this. But as far as an introductory or a reintroductory for a lot of people who might have the vaguest of memories of the Herculoids, and just this is it right there. This gives you the details, and it's a great way to I think start this rather than starting it in some radical way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This it's a comic book comfort food, for people who are familiar with this, and it's a great introductory for people who aren't. So yeah, top
Yeah.
notch first issue. Again, masterclass in minimalism. The art is very simple, easy, cartoony. Looks like animation cells at
Hmm.
some points, but it works. It really works. It flows. It is a light read, but it's a good read.
Right. And I think that's the appeal for a younger audience is definitely the art and the simplicity of the story. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good thing. I think even with all the properties that they had, I remember Thundercats always being on the edge of almost being dark sometimes, especially
Mhm.
when Mumra came out and stuff like that. Silver Hawks had Monstar who would, transform into this. So they had a little bit of that dark stuff. I always remember the Herculoids, always having that, villain of the week kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And if this plays out that way, I think it'll be cool. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
even if the villain of the week like lasts a couple of issues,
Right.
and then it just moves on to the next, villain, then it'll work. I know because I wasn't a huge Herculoids fan, and I think it was because of Gloop and Glop or whatever their names are. They just bothered
Glop
the
and Gleep.
yeah, they just bothered the shit out of me because they didn't make noise, and it was one of those things where they just made sound, but
Mhm.
the Herculoids knew what they were talking about or saying.
Yep.
So yeah, and they do the same thing in the comic, and I'm like, they're not saying that; they're just saying blah, 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 blah. And they're getting it. But yeah, I liked it because it was simple and it brought me back to like watching those couple of episodes and stuff like that. So yeah, I think Dynamite did right. I was kind of like concerned in the beginning when they announced that they were taking on these IPs,
Mhm.
but they've been hiring really solid creative teams
Yeah, yeah.
for these books. So
And
yeah.
Tom Stagowski, he's an old pro. He's been he's written a lot of books under his belt over the last I think 30 or so years for his career.
Mhm.
He's used to world building. He's used to shaking up status quo. So yeah, I think as this goes on, it's gonna not necessarily be a villain of the week. I think it'll start that way, like
Right.
this. But yeah, I think he's gonna open it up. I think he's gonna expand it. I mean,
Yes.
maybe we'll even get the Herculoids off world. We'll see. Yeah,
We need more covers like that.
look at that. We need more
Come
covers
on.
like this.
Oh yeah, crossover and McNolan and Liefeld. That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be
And when
crazy.
it would be insane.
Because you know what? You know what's great? Everyone rips on Todd or Rob for not drawing feet or for not being able to draw feet. He at least tries to draw feet. You
Yes.
notice
Yes.
Mignola is like very rarely drawing feet, and when he does, yeah, it's a Rob level.
It's the first thing they teach you is to just put something in front of it.
It's like hiding a
tree, some rocks.
It's like hiding a pregnancy on a television sitcom.
Yes, of course.
I've got the groceries and I carry them around for the whole episode.
For the whole episode.
To show I'm not pregnant.
Oh my God. All right, guys, there you go. Those are your 2 books that we have for you: Jump Scare from Dark Horse and the Herculoids from Dynamite.
This, as much as Jump Scare wanted me to actually see these fake movies that exist only in Cullen Bunn's head, Herculoids really makes me want to go back and watch some of those old cartoons.
Yeah, it's funny because you know what? I sat down yesterday and I was like, we have every freaking app that you can think of to watch something, and I was like, there's nothing I want to fucking watch. So I'm sitting on my couch and I'm watching on my Apple TV. I have all the apps, and I said, you know what? I just opened up YouTube and I wrote in literally 80s cartoons, and you can watch hours.
Oh,
so they have like whole Saturday lineup with the commercials and everything.
Yep.
Dude, I sat there, and I can just fast forward the cartoons that I don't want to watch because I watched so much Care Bears in my life that I couldn't watch another episode of Care Bears. Yep. So I watched an episode of freaking Dungeons and Dragons, which I didn't know how much I missed that cartoon, which was great with the fucking dungeon master just popping up every now and then.
Yeah, those channels are great. There's a guy that does like a 6-hour marathon of the Marvel 60s, cartoons.
Right.
And I love when they do it. Like I think Len mentioned it was like a way to kind of get away with it, where they put it on like an old TV on the screen.
Oh,
like it's in like an old, like the image is in an old TV.
You
get like a little of the background. I always think that's a little neat effect. Hasbro has a 24/7 live streaming G.I. Joe episode.
Yes.
Yeah, you could look at and watch the episodes at your choice of whatever you want to watch, or you could just, hey, what episode are we in the middle of right now? And Yeah,
that's cool. But the thing that I realized when I was watching it is I mean, you don't realize it when you're young, but when I'm watching it back now, they would always have the toy commercial before the episode started.
Yeah.
So if I was watching Centurions, the Centurion commercial would come on with the toys, and then Centurions would come on a freaking Lone Star or whatever shit. It was crazy how many freaking commercials they gave us of just freaking toys and cereal.
Right.
That's all it was.
In the middle of a half-hour commercial, narrative commercial, as a lot of these cartoons were,
Yeah, that was crazy. That propaganda was fucking perfect for little kids saying, I want that. That's why we had it. All right, kiddies. That's all that we have for you this week. So if you like what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. I think we got a couple of subscribers over the last couple of weeks, which is awesome. They're amazing. Nice. But invite your friends. Come along. We're here every single week live. And if you have questions that you want us to answer, if you want to ask them live, or if you want to send them, beforehand, we'd love to answer them for you. Just click subscribe to the podcast. We'll be here every week, like I said. If you want to be on the podcast, like I mentioned before, you want to promote yourself and or a project that you've got coming up, amazingactioncomics.com/podcast. Fill out the form. John and I would love to have you on. We are still accepting submissions for our online library. So if you want more eyes on your book, we'll add it onto our library so that, you can get weekly stats or monthly stats is what I've been doing now to see who's been, eyeing your book and see what's going on there. There's events and news at amazingactioncomics.com as well. Last but not least, please do not forget to support your local comic book shop. We want them to be around for a while. I think this medium is going to be around for a while because it's art and people love art. Whether it's going to be in a brick and mortar shop or where it's going to be available directly to you, who knows what's going to happen to the future. But I think this medium will be around for a while, even long after John and I are gone. John, where do you get your comic books from?
Well, I get my comics at The Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And just like any local comic shop, you can come on down to The Joker's Child and get these great comics that we talk about. You could get all of Dynamite's or Oni's and the Cellverse's, rehashes and reimaginings and retreads of our favorite and forgotten cartoon shows from when we were kids or even before we were kids. And you can also buy action figures and stuff at these places too, but also not only at the Joker's Child, but at your local comic shop, you could still take the Amazing Action Comics Indie Comic Challenge. Add a little bit of indie comics into your superhero diet, whether it's something old, something new, something borrowed, or something a little blue. Definitely take the Amazing Action Comics Indie Comic Challenge. Make sure you pick up at least one indie comic each time you go to your local comic shop, or come on down to Fairlawn and I'll get you one at the Joker's Child.
There you go. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, please, please, please be amazing, stay amazing, and read something amazing.